Hello and welcome to Expanded Woman Business Network Podcast. I'm your host, Sherry Gideons, and this is my co-host, Misty Willis.
Hello, everybody. So I just want to welcome you to the show, and I also want to welcome our guest, Melody Johnson. She's a specialist in reading and behaviors, and she's been doing it for over 10 years. She's created a unique program to help support homeschooling and virtual learning programs for families. And her company is Loving Literacy, and it helps empower children to read, eliminates frustration for parents, and nurtures the hunger for learning. So welcome, Melody. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you so much, Sherry, and thank you so much, Misty, for inviting me on your show. I'm really excited.
We're excited to have you.
So happy to have you. And of course, bringing your beautiful energy and your light background that is just inspiring and motivating.
I know, it's so cute.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorite backgrounds. I get a lot of compliments on this one.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So Melody, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started doing what you're doing now.
Yes. So about 2 years ago, I actually was a public school teacher. I worked in the public school system, but it even goes a little bit further back than that. When I was in high school, I was a high school dropout. I just could not get it together. And one of the things that I really wanted was I wanted to be able to bring something big into the world, but I wasn't sure exactly how to go about doing that. And I decided at that very moment that I needed to move forward. So I studied for my GED. This test, if you guys don't know, that particular test is about 8 hours for 2 days. So 8 hours each day. And the first time I took it, the first day, I called my mother and I said, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe I didn't study enough. Maybe I should wait for the next session. And my mom said, you know what? Go ahead and take the next session anyway. So I went ahead and I took the next session. And about a month and a half later, I got the results back. Remember, there was no internet back then to check your results. You had to wait in the mail, snail mail.
I remember those days.
Yes. So I got the certification and I ended up getting my GED. And it was at that very moment that I realized, what else could I possibly do? What could I do? If I did this, can I do something else? So it started opening up other doors of possibilities for myself. And I went to college and I decided that at that time, I wanted to be a physical therapist assistant. And I realized that wasn't what I wanted at that time. And at that very moment, that's when I became pregnant with my son. And when I gave birth to him, I realized, what have I done for myself that I could do for other people that have children? And one of the things that I learned was reading. That was like a big thing that my mother encouraged for me. I was struggling with math. It was bad. It was pretty bad when I was younger. That was my weakest area. And I was extremely not confident in that area. But what I did was I leaned towards reading. And reading allowed me to escape the everyday struggles that I had. And it was at that point, I've always remembered my mother nurturing that part of me, always taking me to the library, allowing me to take out the maximum amount of books, which was sometimes 35 books. Yeah. And I'd read all of them and bring them back the next week.
Wow.
So having that little memory of me doing that as a child and now being an adult, I understand the importance of having to read. I started off working in a preschool and I worked my way up through college, ended up with a master's degree in reading. After going through all of that, what I just told you.
I love it.
That's amazing.
And so, I had to overcome some of those of my own struggles. And then when I became a public school teacher, I realized how many of those fears that children actually have with not wanting to excel because they're scared of the judgment. They're scared of if they mess up. They're scared of will their peers know that they can't read. Mm-hmm. And this goes back as far as pre-K. With kids not knowing how to write the letters in their name, and it's that very memory that can start that trauma for kids. A lot of people don't realize this. Even some teachers don't realize it, saying in front of a whole class, you don't know the letter such and such, that can be detrimental to a child's growth.
Yeah.
So what I started doing was I started implementing some things in my classroom, which was making a more loving classroom, a more classroom that embraces each child.
Mm-hmm.
Even the children that say they can't read, I started getting them to read, and they started becoming my highest readers.
Oh.
And it's that I've done is how I've came up with loving literacy. I started making little things together and just putting little programs together, but not actually coming out with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the end of last year that I realized that I needed to make a change, but I didn't know what that change was. And then my daughter became really ill. She became very sick, and she has epilepsy. And it got to the point where I was doing a lot. I was balancing work, I was balancing school, I was trying to balance family, and I couldn't do it all. And I said to myself, man, you know what? There's a lot of homeschool parents that are probably going through something that I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
And it all came to a head. One day we were sitting down looking through an album, and I kept asking my family, where am I? It was like 4 or 5 years. I see pictures of my kids, I see pictures of my husband, other family, but I didn't hardly see pictures of myself. And the responses that I kept getting was, you weren't here because you had a great papers. You weren't here because you had to do something for work. And I realized that I had worked so hard and stayed so focused on work that I wasn't focusing on my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I needed to make a shift.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into my boss's office and I told her effective immediately, I quit. I have to take care of my daughter. She was going through some struggles and I had to take care of her. And at that moment, I said, okay, what do we do next?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, here's when I start my company. And 2 weeks later, COVID hit. And I kept getting massive amounts of emails, text messages from parents panicking, saying, I don't know how to teach such and such. I don't know what strategy to use. I just printed out 10 worksheets. To give to little Billy. He's like 7 years old. And I'm like, that's not going to work for little Billy if he doesn't know how to read. So I said, let me try to help you. And so I started getting more groups together and forming more groups with parents so I could teach them the strategies that could help their child.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the problems that the children are having today is parents are going through struggles. But it's because these kids are watching their parents, they're also struggling too. And they don't say anything. They actually keep quiet about that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say anything to their parents.
You've hit so many key points here that I
Mm-hmm.
think are very vital and very vital to to really tap into. And one is yourself, because we don't realize that when we look inside of ourselves and we really begin to ask certain questions and get clear about what brings us joy. And what I'm hearing from you is you discovered that reading brought you joy, that the literacy of reading brought you joy. And so that lit your fire.
Yes.
And so, it's from getting clear about what brings you joy that you're able to also look back and identify with what's missing right now in schooling and our teaching. And it really kind of brings me back to the awareness of so many things that you've shared. It's bringing it back to the heart.
Yes.
Because you're right. We live in a society that's so fast paced, and the focus is driven on achievement, and the focus is driven on what can I get rather than what you've really gotten clear about. And that's to bring children back to their self-confidence.
Yes.
And back to fun and joy and the heart. And the strategies, it sounds like, oh my God, it just gave me the chills when I said that. I'm so aware of what you were saying. But it really kind of identifies for me is it sounds like you've developed a well-rounded program that's creating the whole child and building that self-confidence. Because I can say this, when I was in 3rd grade, I had a math teacher, that he basically called me out in the front of the classroom. And because I'm a visual person, visual and kinesthetic, and because He wanted me to know what he was trying to describe right away. So what did he do? He embarrassed me in front of the whole classroom. And do you know that I completely shut down the rest of my life when it came to math?
Yes.
Never wanted to apply myself again after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you do is you mask it with other things. And I'm really glad that you brought that to light, Sherry, because I even did this as a kid. Like, I had a teacher in second grade that did the same exact thing to me. Made me stand up and try to recite like multiplication tables. And I was like having difficulty with that and other things. And I think sometimes as a teacher, we may just only think of, oh, you know what? They need to know this content, but it's not just that content. You've got to take into consideration, what is that child going through right now at home?
Right.
What is it that they might be going through at school too? Because those two things, they play a factor in how they learn. If you have someone that's totally embarrassed about not being able to recognize their letters or letter sounds, they're going to do what's called avoidance. All of a sudden, we have to go to the bathroom like 10, 15 times.
Right.
You drop pencils on the floor. Oh, let me go over here. I have to do this. Or they'll try to avoid those activities. So what I've done was I've came up with fun and engaging activities to prevent that kind of behavior. And it helps them with focus, which is now, in this day and age, one of the most challenging things. You've got iPads, you've got TV. And now that you're at home and you're relaxing, you got all these notifications coming in.
Exactly.
So for kids, that's a real struggle. But with parents right now trying to work from home, and then you have parents trying to deal with whatever difficult situation that's coming up because of with COVID's bringing, having to work remotely, that can be a real challenge. They may just keep pushing it off. So what I'm offering to parents is I will be the teacher for your child. So all you've got to do is put them in front and let me teach them. And then I also offer coaching to parents if they want to do this independently with them and don't know how. So I think it's part of it is you're not only laying that foundation for the child, but you're helping lay that foundation for the parents too. So they feel empowered and their child feels empowered to read. So if you're doing both of those things together, you're bringing them together, both people are going to feel great, and that it'll be a successful activity for both parties.
So are you doing like group classes where you have like certain grade levels together?
So right now what I'm doing is pre-K to second grade.
Okay.
And with pre-K and second grade, I do either group or I do one-on-one. It depends on the needs of that child. So say, for example, that child is really behind, I may start off one-on-one, but once I start catching them up, I'll include them in a small group. And that small group is like maybe 2 other students. So that way they can start feeling encouraged and share. It's not just throwing them out into a small group and say, okay, do this. Sometimes that doesn't work well with children. And teachers at school do the best that they can with trying to manage how small their groups are. But sometimes it's not possible because you may have up to 25 children in a class, and you may have to have at least 5 to 8 students per a group. So that can become a little challenging. And then you're managing other groups while you have your group. But in this setting, when you're with me, you get either it's a 1-to-3 ratio it can be. So I could have either one child or I could have 3 children up into a group.
So what are you doing, because I love even delving into this topic, because especially for kids in your age category, keeping that focus and getting people, to look in a box and keeping their focus. What are some of the tools you use to get them focused just to start out with, and then get them engaging and, maybe just sharing?
The first thing that I try to tell parents is you have to have a consistent schedule. So, you might wake up at 7 one day, you might wake up at 8 or 9 one day, but during a work week or a school week, you want to maintain a consistent schedule, a visual, as you would say, Sherry, you want to provide to them. And that's something that I could provide to the parents when they come on board. I actually have a physical schedule that I give to them. And I tell them, this is the times you can change the times. Like, it's editable for the parent, but I tell them you can change the time, and you talk to your child about the expectation of when they do that activity and what is to be done. So that eliminates a lot of, that frustration and conflict. You didn't do your work, or, you didn't do it right. That is something we try to eliminate completely, so that way the child feels confident and will want to do the next activity. So a consistent schedule. Make sure if you're saying you agree at, 10 o'clock that you're going to do reading from 10 to 10:30, make sure it's from 10 to 10:30 and set a clock. Set a timer. Everybody has a timer. You can have it on your phone. You have it on Google. Teach them how to use the timer. Pre-K students can do this too. Ask Alexa, ask, Google, they'll help you. Ask, Siri. So having them part of that process too actually encourages them to be held accountable, because now they know the time that they're supposed to do that activity and what they're supposed to do. So involving them in the process is also important too.
Do you think it's better for them? I'm sorry. Do you think it's better for them to learn during the early parts of the day or in the evening?
For me, I think it depends on the child. It really depends on the child. So for some parents, I know they will start their schoolwork at 11 and they end at 5. And then I know some parents, like myself, I tell my children, we'll start early in the morning and then you can finish at about 1 o'clock. Yeah, but I give them a choice too. So now we're involving children with a choice and voice. You're giving them options. You're giving them choices. Half of the time, they'll wake up early to finish the work. So that way they can have the rest of the day to, do other activities.
So are you on with them the whole time? Because obviously I feel like your time can be taken too if you're doing it in the morning and in the afternoon. So are you on with them at a certain time that, together, all of you, or is it independent?
So we're all on at a certain time.
Okay.
And so, of course, I have to establish if they're East Coast or West Coast, and then that can be a little tricky, but we make that establishment first. And then I have like an outline of what we'll do for that day. So it'll be like a warm up. And each activity can take 2 to 3 minutes, but it's about 30 minutes. So it's like back to back to back. And we're doing it just in order all the way to the end. So that way each child gets a chance. And so each child gets to reinforce that literacy skill that they need to work on.
Very cool. Yeah. Sounds like such a great program for them. And to know that they have extra support, because I know, like, my husband, he tries to help his daughter with their work, but it's like a constant fight.
Yeah,
she doesn't want to do it, and when you have somebody on the outside that is not involved in the family dynamics, I think that helps quite a bit too.
Yeah, and what's great,
an authority figure,
Yes, I love how you touched on that, and that's another thing. Sometimes you have the personality of the parent and you have the personality of the child. And sometimes they butt heads. And that's normal, because as a parent, you always want your child to do a little bit better. And for me, what I provide you with is eliminating that frustration. The only thing that a parent would need to do is log them into the program if they need assistance, like if they're in pre-K and can't navigate a mouse. That's when they log them in. Or when they have to print out the materials that I provide in-house that I give to them to do during the days that I don't see them. So that way that activity is still ongoing. So when they come back, it's still fresh in their mind, and we can add new content to it. So it's like laying a foundation and then building the building blocks to reading on top of it.
It's so interesting that I was thinking about while you were talking about that is so I had a second crop of kids, right before 40. And one of the things that I struggled with as a parent from the normal school system is they teach completely different than I was taught. And so when it came to doing homework or even trying to help them, I literally had no clue, because my children would get frustrated because they would say, "Oh, Mom, you're completely teaching me the wrong way. You're helping me the wrong way. And so then I would be frustrated, because how do you teach or help a child as a parent when the school system is completely different than I went, 40, 50 years ago? I'm 55, so 40 years ago.
Well, even in just 5 years, I mean, it changes constantly.
So, like, I'm so glad you said that. When I was a special ed teacher and I had to teach math, I totally understand, because at that point I was learning old math a new way.
Yes.
And that was like multiplication. They had something called a magic box. And it was like a different way to break down how to multiply. And a lot of the kids were like getting the box confused. And I'm traditional, old school when it comes to that. I'm like, let me just show you how I do it this way. And then let's try the magic box this way. Right. As a parent, if you have no clue what a magic box is,
no clue.
You're not going to know how to teach them magic box. And then you go through trying to search the internet for hours. I had one parent, she came to me in tears, and I felt so bad for her. She was like, I don't know how to teach my child this. It was magic box, and then it was like some reading strategies. And she was like, I've been through 8 videos on YouTube. I've looked up these sheets, and then she's showing me all like these pictures of like all these worksheets that didn't even go with this child's level. And I said, just get rid of all that stuff and have your child log on, and I'll teach them.
Oh boy.
She was at her wit's end. She was working 2 jobs at the same time and trying to work from home with one of those jobs. So I told her, let me just teach your child. You'll be okay. And just print out the worksheets that I give to you that's made in house, and you give it to your child. But yeah, you'll find a lot of parents struggle with that. And sometimes it could be a pride thing sometimes too. You don't want to say, you don't know, but at the same time, you really want to help your child. Sure. So it's like, sometimes it's like that fine balance. But I let parents know it's okay if you don't know, I'll teach you. That's how we all learn. That's how we, even as young children, that's how we've all learned. So being open to learning new things, and then being able to want to apply that, you're reinforcing the skill by teaching your child too. So that's why I'm always open to teaching parents.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it starts there.
Yeah,
it starts there. And I think you'll find a lot of people right now that maybe don't normally homeschool are going to that direction because of the situation we're in with COVID and stuff. So I think that what you're doing is just amazing, because I think a lot of us need it. A lot of us need that extra support and help. So we appreciate
one of the things that I've noticed with homeschooling, a lot of people did not know the difference between homeschooling and virtual learning. So I explained to them, with homeschooling, that means you're taking your child out the school system completely, and you're doing it yourself. Like you're providing all of the materials to your child. Or if you're doing virtual learning, that's when you're going through the school and they're providing the content for you. And they're not only providing the content for you, but they're also grading the test, and they're still assessing your child. And it's all done through a school platform. Now, the challenge with that is you're also now needing to learn a whole new system. Your child might need to learn a whole new system, and it's going to take a little bit longer for you to do your work. So, and that's something even I've gone through with having to help my child, learning the new system again. But again, it's just being patient and being open, and you have to apply that same skill when you're teaching your child how to read. And that's something I've done. I'll tell you why I also do what I do. I had a child in 1st grade that came to me, and he did not know the letters in his name. And it broke my heart, because at that age, many of the children around you are already reading. And even if they're coming back from a summer break, they know some from kindergarten that they've learned. And it became very apparent when we would be in a small group setting, maybe about 3 or 4 children, and we're reading, and he's still struggling. And I tried using other methods that the school gave me. And I got to the point where I got tired of it. You know what I did? I closed my door And I said, I'm going to teach him the way I want to teach him.
There you go.
And I started pulling out stuff that I knew he loved, that he would read. And by the time he left me, he was able to read on a decent level. I'm talking about compared to where he was at, which was like an emergent reader, like pre-K. He was actually almost on first grade reading level. And then when COVID hit, that's, I don't know how he's doing now. I hope he's doing well. But one of the things I think about is that situation. He may not have that support at home. He didn't have that support at home because everybody spoke a different language. Right. So whatever he got from school. So if you have a parent like that and they're trying to get what they can from the school and they don't know how to navigate the platform, they don't know who to contact. They have, as a matter of fact, sometimes if they're speaking another language, they may not really have a supportive group of parents to help them. Where do they go? So that's the support I provide to them. And I'm very patient. I'll tell them it's okay. We can just have a little bit of a longer session and I'll walk you through what you need to do. So at least we're providing some sort of community within Loving Literacy where they can say, hey, I have a problem. Can you help me? And parents can all chip in because you may be another parent that needs that help too. So if everyone's chipping in and we gather a community of parents together to help all children, then we'll all not be in that boat. So that is why I do what I do.
It leads me to think of just like one of my children, because, I have one of my twins that is just an overachiever. But then the other twin struggles with just wanting to focus on school at all. And then the other thing is it makes me think in a learning environment, what happens with a lot of kids is they don't want to come forward and sometimes ask for help, because there's that self-esteem issue. And if a child's struggling, how do you address it in a learning environment with, other children around because of, those levels of fear in the child?
Well, what I did was I had to assess each child. And then I would tell them, I would say, is this something you're struggling with? And I would ask the child permission. And this is not something normally teachers would do, but I would ask them, can I please help you with this? And they would say yes. And so when you're getting them to say yes, they're opening up to you. And they will be more involved with whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So I'll say, I have a chart. Do you think this chart would help you? Can I give you this chart? Yes, please. Do you know how to use this chart? No, I don't. Well, let me show you how you can use it. And so that is how I approach with children, how to use a new strategy if they're struggling with something. I don't do the route of, little Timmy, you don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. I actually don't like that method at all. I think that creates trauma for a child. And we both talked about that, about the whole math teachers, doing that. And that was why I was not a fan of math. But for me, I want to encourage the child to learn how to read. Have you ever seen the movie The Never Ending Story?
Yes.
Okay. So what was awesome, every time he opened the book would come to what? It would come to life. It would be animated. So when a child opens up a book, I want them to feel encouraged. I want them to feel, wow, look at this place I've never been to before. Wow, I'm learning about something I never even known before that I could possibly do. It would be like possibilities are infinite. You want them to feel encouraged. You want them to feel like they can tackle any task they want. But it starts with little steps like that. Just telling them, can I help you? Or saying, you know what? I noticed that when you were reading from left to right, and you weren't doing that before. You're doing a great job. Give them that encouragement. Let them know, I've seen you reading for 10 minutes more than you did last time. I'm so proud of you. That kind of stuff you should see. When I sit down and I talk to the kids about their assessment and they walk away, they have bounce in their step.
Yes.
And then I'm looking at the other kids at the tables, and they're like, what did she say? You know, they want to know. They're like, and then they encourage each other. Good job on your reading.
Oh, I love that.
This is kindergarten. This is kindergarten level that you would see them doing this. And so since I can't be at the place that I was before, I want to bring that online for parents.
Yes.
I want parents to know, you know what? I may not be able to have the skills right now, but I can get those skills. And I want their child to say, you know what? I couldn't read this book before, but I can read it now. I can read it to grandpa. I can read it to grandma, you know, and just be able to know that they can come across anything. Now, here's the thing about learning how to read, and a lot of people don't understand this. Reading affects every single academic area. So if you don't know you don't know your letter sounds, and this a perfect example is here in kindergarten, you would be expected to read a basic word problem, like a little small paragraph.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so if you don't know how to read by then, you're really going to struggle.
Yes.
Because you're not going to understand what's happening. So something that I would do with the kids, I had an anchor chart, and I would go over the anchor chart the day before. And then, like, as we're about to leave, I'd go over the anchor chart again. And then when we'd come back the next day and I'm actually teaching them the lesson, then I would say, hey, do you remember this anchor chart? Everybody's hand is up. I'm like, what is this anchor chart about? And this is how you get them involved. You get them engaged, because now they know that content, and they will be willing to learn just a little bit more to bridge that gap. And I do that with reading. I do that because I want every child to feel empowered. I want every parent to know, you know what? He couldn't do this before, but he can do this now.
Right.
Awesome. So inspiring.
Thank you.
It's so good. Like, I want to learn how to read again.
Come on over, girl.
Well, and what comes to mind for me too, because I have a granddaughter in 2nd grade, and they tried to classify her as, you know, learning disabled early on because Bella was born without her eye attached at the back of her eye, and it's a very, very rare congenital disease. And long story short, my daughter said, no, we're not gonna prejudge her and say that she's gonna be learning disabled because, you know, her eye isn't attached. And so, long story short, in the school system, they started to act like there was something wrong with Bella, and they would say that to her. This is at kindergarten.
Yep.
And so right off the get-go, my granddaughter started thinking that. And so my daughter said, bull, this ain't happening. So she went to the school, and, you know, she stuck up for my granddaughter, and she said, okay, what kind of extra help can I get? What kind of systems can I get her into? If this is a problem, what's available to me to, you know, help this situation?
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing is that my granddaughter, I noticed with her, just everything you've been sharing. When you take the time as a teacher to encourage the child instead of looking at them as having a disability and programming that into them, and then, you know, like with my granddaughter was here this weekend, and so I do the same thing you're talking about. I would say, you know, Bella, my goodness, you are so smart and you're so animated, and I love the stories you tell. Grandma just loves your kisses. And so all weekend, just like you were saying, when she noticed I was doing that to her, she kept reframing what I was saying. And on top of that, she says, you know what, Grandma, I love your kisses. They make me feel so good. And I love the way you talk to me. It makes me feel so good, Grandma. Aww. And so what you've been sharing is, I feel like you need to be teaching that to teachers, girl. I feel like you need to be addressing this with the traditional school system, so we don't continue to program these children to create these, you know, levels of fear, these false illusions, these false beliefs that keep just basically moving our system forward and recreating over and over all the low self-esteem and not good enough thoughts.
I think part of that, so there's a lot of things that stem from exactly what you're saying. It stems from more of the outdated system that's placed in the educational system. So the way people used to learn, it needs to change. Like, and not just in the curriculum, but it has to change in the attitudes of the individuals that are teaching. But then it's sad because it's almost like a trickle down effect. If there was a law passed, then there's a certain way that, the admins have to administer this training. And then that training, the teacher has to do it that particular way. And if they don't, there's repercussions for that teacher. And so it's almost like a hard spot, to be as a teacher. But one thing that we all have control of is our own attitude.
Yes.
And how we approach things, and my whole thing was, if I'm not laughing and they're not laughing, then no one's having a good time. And this is boring. Like, nobody wants to do that. Like, no one likes sitting in a classroom just being spoken to and then being asked to regurgitate the same thing. Right. No, let's do a fun dance and do it a different way. Like, let's sing and let's take turns singing that one part that we need to memorize. So that way we can just recall the content easy. Like, why not just do it like that? But a lot of people are still in the fixed mindset of, you need to sit at a table. You need to sit at the table and do the work. And it's not always like that. Everyone is a different learner. Like you said, you're more of a kinesthetic learner. Right. I'm not auditory at all. I actually am very visual and I'm kinesthetic. I'm a combination. So if you learn that about the child early on, you can help. Now, with the whole, breaking down with having a disability, what happens with that is the school has to classify that child so that way they can give them the help they need, so they can get a teacher to help them, or they lose funding. And it's like so crazy. It's like they have to label them in order to get the help. And I'm like, well, why do we have to do that? Why can't I just help? Yeah. We can't. Unfortunately, they have it listed like that. But I tell the kids, you know what? This test does not make you. I'm like, because the kids will know if they got a good test, good grade or not so great grade. And I'll say, the test does not make you. What do you think of yourself? And this is when you get real responses from kids. They'll tell you the truth. They'll tell you, I don't feel good about myself. And I'll say, well, why not? Because I don't know how to read and I've seen everyone else, reading. Well, what can I help you with? Can I help you with something? Yes, you can. Well, what's one thing we can work on together today? And then we do that one thing. And then it started to be the one thing I would, text the parent and say, hey, little Billy said he wanted to work on this one thing. Can you work on this one thing with him at home? Oh, sure. My parents were amazing. All the parents I ever had, they were always open to learning. And so if the parent is open to learning, then chances are that child is going to learn too. Right.
Well, and I think it takes you being that person to connect that dot. Yes. A lot of the teachers don't talk to you the whole year, right, until conference time.
Right. No, I was that teacher that would text you. Just wanted to let you know, Billy had a great day. Just want to let you know this is something he would like to work on. And it could be like a 5-minute, conversation. I can't talk too long, but I wanted to let you know. And, it's funny you say that, Misty, because a lot of times teachers are bogged down with a lot of paperwork. Like, yes, it's the most insane thing. I'm talking about as soon as you come in, I was getting to my job at 5:00 in the morning, and I was leaving sometimes after 5. Wow. So just to do paperwork and then grade, and hopefully I can get to the copy machine before other people. Oh, right. So you're trying to, just doing those little things. That's not even talking about like connecting with parents and stuff. Yeah. So, I would do a lot of texting with the parents, sending them messages, just letting them know and letting them know that they can text me anytime. That's important. Having that relationship with the parent, because sometimes there could be something going on with the parent and you may not know. Right. So it's like, you're not just looking at the child, you got to look at like the whole
family.
picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what stands out to me too in what you're sharing, I mean, what really touches me in my heart is because like anything else, it's language, it's communication, and it's love. And it comes back to that basic principle. Love is the highest vibration in the universe. And so in which way can we be more loving and express that and expand that to the ones around us? And especially in a learning environment as a teacher, if you're, and it sounds like you're applying that basic principle, because I feel like that's what's the cause of these children opening up, these children being able to communicate more with you. Like we go back to that idea of, we want to hold our secrets in, and we want to hold our feelings in. And we don't realize that it's by doing that is the cause of what's growing those roots again of the whole not good enough, not worthy, and building that. Instead of what you're doing is you're opening up the environment for expression.
Yes.
And safety.
Yeah.
And now that's planting seeds and growing, these better ways of being for these children. And I feel, I get the chills when I say it, and I'm hearing you and I'm listening to you express, because I can truly feel that you mean what you say.
Yes.
And, I really appreciate you being able to say that, because love is the one thing that can break all barriers. Mm-hmm. Like I would get kids that were displaced, and they would come to the classroom and be excited because that was the only safe place they could be. Mm-hmm. I've had kids come from domestic situations that were, terrible, but when they come to school, they feel safe. They feel loved. They know that they're going to get a hug from Mrs. Johnson. They know that they're going to probably get hugs from their friends. I've had something that one of my good friends created called a hug rug. And it was a small rug, and it was a sign behind it that said hug rug. And if the child felt like they were just having a really rough day, I'll tell them, go stand on the hug rug. And somebody knew that if they're standing on that rug, they have to hug them.
I love it.
You hug them and you give them love, because that is what every person needs, especially now since they're at home. They can't see their friends. I know they want hugs, but they can't give them a hug. So maybe we can do virtual hugs. Or if they're at home and they feel lonely, they have no one to talk to, and they only have their parent to talk to. Sometimes you want to talk to someone that's your own age, talk about the things you like. That's where I come in. Loving Literacy comes in. I give them the opportunity to chat with each other and talk about what's your favorite cartoon. And then you ask a question like that, and the kids will like all over it. My favorite show is, and they love to be able to share that. But, as parents, we're going through stuff, but I'm trying to provide things for the kids so that way they have a safe place they can come to, and definitely loving environment. Mm-hmm. It's something we always encourage.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back really quickly, but you're saying like how people learn. My youngest son, he's very extremely hyper. Like he can't even sit down to eat for 5 minutes, So I would go the first day of school, and he's about to be in 7th grade now. But I'd go on the first day of school, or when you meet the teacher, and I'm telling the teacher, I'm like, you'll want to sit him at the back of the class because he really needs to stand up. And to not be, I guess, take away from the other kids or distract the other kids. I'm like, sit him in the back of the class so that he can stand up and do his work, because that's how he had to operate. And he's super, super intelligent and smart, but he just can't sit still at all. So I would have him, do that every time. And it seemed to really change the dynamic. At first, the teachers were like strict and wanting him like, you need to sit down. And, and he just couldn't. He can't. He couldn't do it. And I don't medicate or anything like that. So not to say that's bad. I just choose that for my own family. But, I feel like that was a way for him to learn and let him be himself, basically.
And what I love about that? You understood what his need was. Mm-hmm. And you didn't push him in the opposite direction to sit. Like I had desks where, and I would ask the student, do you feel comfortable sitting or would you rather stand? Because I see you standing up a lot. And they'll say, I'd rather just stand. I'm like, okay. So I would take tape, put it on the floor where their box is, where their desk is. And I'll say, you got to stay in your box, okay? But you can stand the whole time if you want. And I'd still have a chair available to them. And like, if they want to sit, they just had to push it to the side so no one, would trip over it.
Yeah.
And they felt great working that way. I did a lot of those kind of things in the classroom because I have the special ed background. Like, however you want to work, I'll work with you. But, we also had those parameters. But that's great that you recognize that your child needed that. And that's exactly what we do in Loving Literacy. I'm not going to expect the child to sit the whole time for a 30-minute lesson. That's just, to me, that's insane, especially if you have like a pre-K student.
Yes.
We get up, we need to stretch, we need to do something called a brain break, and we need to like move our bodies because that's what is meant for children to do. They have to be able to move their bodies. And then we sit back down and then we get back into the fun activity. So it's like a little bit of both. Like you would see a little bit of singing, a little bit of dancing, some more movement, maybe some deep breathing, and then we're getting back into the activity. But yeah, everybody learns differently. Like if you've got a child that's hyper, I had a child, my first year of kindergarten, he came to me. The first 2 weeks, he screamed with me.
Oh, wow.
The first 2 weeks, every day. He'd never been in a school setting before, so this was new for him. And I had exactly that. It was a desk. I didn't have him in the back because he'd fool around in the back. So I had him in the front. But I also had him in the front part where I know if he wanted to stand up and go to the sink, or if he just needed a minute to just walk and stretch on the side, I let him do that. And I didn't know this, but he was like a huge fan of like Star Wars. Whenever I noticed he would do something cool, I would put a Star Wars sticker on his desk directly. And I didn't say anything. I would just smile at him and I would just put it down. And he caught on really quick. And by the end of the year, his whole desk was filled with like these Star Wars stickers. He loved it. And then I gave him a whole sheet of those same Star Wars stickers at the end of the year so he could take it home. The point of me saying this is he understood the reinforcement. And he knew that I wasn't going to force him to sit because some people don't need to sit. Some people need to move their bodies so they can think. In fact, that's what's actually encouraged. But, we have a system in place in school where kids are encouraged to sit, and it doesn't work for everybody. It just doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing that up because my girlfriend, Christy, one of the things, she believes everything you believe. And so what she's trying to bring into the virtual environment right now is just what you're saying. So breaks between, lessons and opening up, whether it's activity where she brings these big, huge, expanding colored things. And she says, she teaches them the breathing process. She teaches them tapping,
that's great.
How to tap their whole body through movement. And then one of the other things I used to teach children exercise. And so I had a kids fit program at my gym because I owned a health club. And so one of the things that I used to do with them just for 2 or 3 minutes was what's called laughing Buddha. And you'd be like, you go to the extremes, and the freaking kids loved it. They would go crazy doing all these, crazy laughs.
Sherry, I may have to try that one.
I know. And I mean, it's extreme. And you started off, and you keep going to all these different extremes, and it allows the kids to open up and go to all these crazy extremes. But it's fun.
Yes. And that's exactly what learning should be. Like, it shouldn't have to be. Learning is very different. It can be different for each child, but it's what you bring to the table. Like, if you're making it fun and you're making it engaged, then they are going to be on it and they will remember everything you tell them.
Yes.
Kids don't forget.
Nope.
You don't forget. So, that's why I like to do like these games with the children. I'll do like, And sometimes what I love doing is I love for them to correct me. I'll say, I'm just having such a hard time. Could you just help me? Yeah, sure, I can help you. They're always willing to help. Those are the skills that we're born with. Everybody wants to help. So getting the child that involved in a lesson will want them to want to learn more, and they'll look forward to school. I had one child, he hated Fridays, and I was like, well, I asked the kids, what is your favorite day of the week? He said, any day except Friday. Why? Because I can't come to school. I was like, I feel great. Like,
yeah.
I come to school. He loves being able to read, talk to his friends, show his friends what he learned. And then like he likes to teach. Like kids love to be able to show that to each other. And so one of my favorite memories is this particular child, this is the same child that I told you that needed to stand. And he also had the same, he was hyper, and he just had a hard time sitting. So he would stand when he was in a group. And so it just got to the point where the whole group decided to stand with him. So, and this is what I love about the community in the class.
Yes.
They knew what he needed, and they felt weird sitting down. So they said, well, let's just stand in a circle. And they asked me, can we stand in a circle? And I was like, sure. So I made, I took some duct tape and I put it in a circle, and everyone stood on that circle. And that's how they were able to get through all the book club books together. So that was just one little strategy. They loved it, and they would read to each other. Everybody does things differently. We don't need to do it the same. And if we can put fun in it for kids, they're going to be engaged. They're going to want to interact with the content that you're giving to them. And then they're going to, of course, want to show you what they learned. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So definitely something needed in this world, this crazy world right now, too.
It is.
Yeah, well, it makes me think too, what's wrong with the outdated system? Why hasn't this outdated system been changed? Because even my high schoolers right now talk about how the system is outdated, and even why we need to like just one of my twins said the other day, who's very, the overachiever. She says, why do we have to learn past multiplication and division? She says, we never really apply the other stuff. And nowadays we're so involved in technology that if we need anything, all we do is need to use a calculator.
Yes.
Why won't the system, even going back to history to a point of, so far back that my kids say, why do we need to, where are we going to apply this in our lives? And it's interesting how kids are evolving to the point where they're starting to realize those sorts of, questions.
I think it has a lot to do with the kind of mindset that a person has. And then if you delve a little bit deeper, it also has to focus on the fear of change. So many times people don't want to change because they're scared of what will happen next.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it may eliminate it may cause discomfort for them, and they don't like that. And that's kind of just how our brains work. Like, say, for example, if you're going on a diet, right? You want that cupcake, you want it, right? But if you eat it, there's a consequence. It's the same concept with people that are in the educational system. They want to change. They may not change because they just don't feel comfortable with the new content that's coming out. And if you have a group of people that are having that same mindset, whether it's negative or positive, you're going to get results. And it may not be the results you want. Like it just, again, it goes back to the mindset of that person. And then it goes back to the mindset of what content they are creating. And that makes a huge difference. So I'll give you an example. I seen something like a few days ago that my daughter had brought about from school. It was SMART goals. And it tells you how to reach your goals. So on this one slide, it said one of your SMART goals could be getting a job or going to college. So I told my daughter, that's wrong. I said, you don't have to go to college. If you want, you can also be an entrepreneur. Like you don't just have those two options. And unfortunately, there's really no options. What options there are programs that invest and buy into the school system. School system has already invested money in those programs, so they're not going to want to let it go as fast, because then they have to find the funding for the new programs. Yeah. So sometimes you'll find that schools will hold on to programs a lot longer than they really should, because they're trying to use money in other areas. So funding is also a challenge. You'll have some communities where the PTA may be able to fund a lot of things, and then you have some communities where the PTA they don't really bring in that much, because there may not be as much parent participation. So, there's a lot of reasons why that could not happen, where the school system is just kind of stuck the way it is. And then you have politics are involved in it, unfortunately, and then that can get really messy. So I think the only thing that as a parent can do, other than voicing what they feel about that to the school system, is they can take control of that education at home.
Right.
So if you choose to homeschool, you're on your own, but you'll do it the way you want it done. Mm-hmm. If you're doing the virtual learning, you still have control over what your child is learning and what you can still teach them. Mm-hmm. Even though you're getting information from the schools, how you filter it to your child. So it's just a little bit how you frame it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a process. It's something that will take time, and it will take different I think different educational leaders in place. I think with having different educational leaders and different thoughts on how to implement a lot of the things that they're doing in the educational system now, and being open to that change, then that's when we'll start to see those changes. And not just with basic reading programs. I'm talking about restructuring things totally. So it was interesting. I was just having a conversation with an old parent. She actually lives in Finland. And so I had heard amazing things about Finland's educational program, and just how it's a very open environment, and how each session, academic session that a child gets, they follow it with a recess. So if they have this 6 academics, right, they have 6 recesses. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what you're getting the children to learn more about the social skills that they really need, because that can become a problem later on, not just in elementary, in middle and high school, but in adulthood too. Yes. Sure. So they're working on that essential skill. And then they're working on being able to be fit and exercise. They're getting that vitamin D from the sun. They're learning how to problem solve, because, problems happen on the playground with other children. So they're getting, and then they're having the ability to move. And we talked about the importance of being able to exercise. And Sherry, you know that more than anything, being from a health background. If they don't move, then they get more frustrated, they get antsy, and you're not going to get the maximum amount of attention from them. And I just loved that Finland was able to do this for their children. I'm like, I wonder if we were able to do that. What if we were able to implement a recess every time they had an academic subject? How different would those statistics change for each child? Even the children that are labeled, how different would their educational system be for them? How different would their grades be? How different would the teachers feel? Maybe a little different, because they have a little bit extra time now to plan.
Yeah.
My middle son had a non-traditional schools. They called it brain-based learning. Mm-hmm. And they were very into that, where they would have multiple breaks during the day. They would have brain breaks or recess, either one. But it was always about keeping them engaged. And he loved it there. They also did a lot of STEAM at that school as well. But what you're talking about reminds me of that brain-based learning in there, and how they were kind of creating that for the kids. And it made a huge difference for him too. And he's another hyper one, but he wasn't as hyper as my youngest one. So he needed a lot of stimulation.
Did you notice the difference in your son when he would come home and tell you about school?
Oh yeah. Like he was excited about what was going on. Even now, like he's in a robotics program and he's in high school. He's a senior now, and talking about his robotics program and how he actually told the teacher's like, well, I can't really teach you too much for the first 2 weeks of school because you can't really do things virtually for robotics. There's not there are some things, but you're building robots and coding and stuff like that. So they said, well, my son goes, well, have us write a paper or something. And I was like, you offered to write a paper?
That's awesome that he was giving recommendations.
Yeah, he's a teacher.
I don't think I could give like nothing. I probably, in that case with robotics, I would ask them to conduct research and see what are the top 3 things that we use today that deal with robotics that we use on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. She's not thinking outside the box.
Yeah. And then you can spin off from that and you can say, you know what? What would be one thing that you would invent? Write a blueprint.
All right.
And then you spin off from that. Yeah. And you say, go to your local, I don't know, Dollar Tree and pick up these supplies. What could you make out of that?
Mm-hmm.
And so you moved from an idea to a possibility to now something that's been completed. But to not do anything, oh gosh, that would drive me nuts.
I'm sure they'll do something, but it was sounding like it wasn't going to be a whole lot, Okay. So I think, but I just thought it was funny because he's taken that to even school now. He's a senior, so he'll be a senior this year. And
he sounds like a great young man. He'll probably do things, Misty.
I think so. He's a great kid, but.
Well, so it's been an hour already. I can't believe
wow.
I know.
Our audience members, how they can reach you, they can find out more about you.
Yes. So you can reach me at Loving Literacy on Facebook. This is also my link to my website, lovinglit.com. And if you'd like, I can drop a Calendly link within the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, I'll pull it up right now. And in Calendly, what you can do is book a free consultation appointment with me. And what I'll do is we can go through the steps on how to, let's see. Okay, good. It'll allow me. If you book this appointment with me, then we can go through the steps of what it is that your child is having difficulty with. And then I'll break it down within that 30 minutes of what I could do for you.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's free. So if, say they wanted some more information about like reading, I could also provide that as well.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. It's been so much fun. And I just love your heart and your light and your personality. It's just been a great conversation, so thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yes, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sherry, and thank you so much, Misty, for inviting me onto this amazing show. I feel very blessed.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank all of our audience members, as always, for watching our show. Mikey, thank you for your support. Larry Schneider. Johanna was here, by the way.
Oh,
and the amazing Mike Chavez. We love you. And of course, it would not be the show without Mr. Awesome, Eric.
Mr. Awesome.
Of course, he said the awesome melody. Yes, he says, think outside the box and build that box through robotics.
Yes, Eric.
Oh my God, he's awesome as always. Anyway, thank you so much. Misty, go ahead and tell our audience members how to reach us.
So we are on Facebook under Expanded Woman Business Network. So you can do facebook.com/groups/Expanded Woman Business Network. Or you can go to facebook.com/Expanded Woman for our page, and that can lead you to the group. We are also on Instagram under Expanded Woman. And what else? I think that's it, right?
That's it. We got them all.
Okay. Yeah. So
even under Twitter as Expanded Woman.
Ooh,
okay. Twitter.
Yes. Twitter too.
I don't know how to tweet, but
you don't know how to. Okay, well, we got to do that. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. And until next Tuesday, please create an amazing week because each and every one of you deserve it. Bye now.
bye, everybody.
Thank you.